Straight ahead on Newswatch 12 at 5, the streets of Rhinelander were full of runners and walkers alike this morning. We'll hear why the annual turkey trot keeps on growing. Plus, a local church went above and beyond today. We'll hear how they helped nourish those in need. And Thanksgiving often evokes that famous image of pilgrims and American Indians. But is that fact or fiction? We'll have the details as Newswatch 12 at 5 starts right now.
Your local news and weather from where you live. Newswatch 12 at 5 starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Newswatch 12 at 5. I'm Dan Hagen. Before the turkey, potatoes, and pie, runners and walkers took to the streets of Rhinelander this morning. About 75 participants got an early start to the holiday for the 4th annual Rhinelander Turkey Trot. The money raised from the event goes right back into the community.
This is a very community-oriented event. You know, the sponsors are local, the runners are local, the money stays local. So everything that we get, we put right back into the community.
In past years, there was snow on the ground, but with better weather this year, a larger group of people showed up to this growing event.
It's the perfect time of year to, think about those that maybe don't have everything that you have, or those that are less fortunate, and help out those, especially in our area. So that's what this is about.
St. Mark Lutheran Church was the start and end point of the race, which allowed a warm location for runners to gather. Drew Boulder of Tomahawk took first overall place with a time of 16 minutes and 52 seconds. Park Falls Mayor Michael Boblick says that much of the city's paper mills equipment has been auctioned off. Boblick says the liquidation process will last at least 2 years and that some of the buildings there will likely be back in use during the liquidation process. Boblick adds he will personally work to collect historic items and paperwork from the mill so that they're preserved for the future. The city had been hoping to get state funding or help to restart the mill, but we know that will not be happening. With Thanksgiving nearly over, a familiar sound will fill the air outside some stores. Shifts for Salvation Army bell ringing have already started, and what's neat about this annual tradition is that the money raised at local kettles will stay in local communities. For example, in Rhinelander, 87% of the money raised will help community members with rent, heat, utilities, and other basic needs. Bell ringing shifts are available all over the Northwoods in Anago, Eagle River, Rhinelander, Tomahawk, Merrill, and Minocqua. The easiest way to sign up is by going to registertoring.com, and not only will you raise money, but you'll spread some holiday cheer as well. For many on Thanksgiving, food is the central part of the holiday. Well, a church near Merrill wanted to make sure people had a full Thanksgiving. St. Paul's Lutheran Church held their 11th annual Thanksgiving free meal program. Church President Joe Schuffelbein says it's important for congregations to serve people in need, even on holidays.
It's what a church can do for people. It shouldn't be all the time when we have our hands out and want something from the community. This was started 11 years ago because we felt as though we needed to give back to the church and the community.
He also said the entire church community should be proud of what they've accomplished in making sure those who cannot cook on Thanksgiving have somewhere to turn.
Everybody in the community should walk away with a feeling that A, either we helped them, or B, they helped us, or C, we helped them and they helped us, because we've got the push and pull there too. So it's really a good feeling for everybody, I think.
St. Paul's Lutheran Church provided one meal per person, including the typical Thanksgiving essentials like turkey, mashed potatoes, and cranberries. About 1 in 3 Americans report they've fallen victim to a phone scam. And around Black Friday is a popular time for scammers to strike. Impersonating big brands like Amazon, Target, and Walmart near shopping season is common. Jeff Kirsten with the Wisconsin Bureau of Consumer Protection says the easiest thing for folks to do is just not pick up the phone if you don't recognize the number. But if you do pick up, be wary of a scammer.
If you don't have caller ID and you answer the phone, as soon as you hear that it's a scam phone call, the best advice is to just immediately hang up.
If the caller asks for money to be wired or to buy gift cards, that is surely a scam. Kirsten says many smartphones nowadays have an option to only allow calls from people in your contacts list.
You can go to the phone app on your phone into the settings, and you can set it up so that only calls that are in your contact list will ring through to your phone. Everything else will go right to voicemail without even ringing.
Keep in mind, if you do that, you could miss important phone calls, though someone who needs to get a hold of you will likely leave a message. In wake of the Waukesha Christmas Parade tragedy, a new trauma hotline has been unveiled by the Children's Hospital in Milwaukee. The hospital said the hotline has received many calls, including about how to talk to children about what happened and if how they're feeling is normal. The tragedy last weekend had more than 6 deaths and has more than 60 injuries associated with it. A mother and daughter who were struck during the parade remain in the hospital with serious injuries. The Perez family says their mother, Romelia, will need a wheelchair to get around. But thanks to a local contractor, she won't have to worry about how to get into her own home. TMJ4's Ben Jordan has the details. A neat story. Well, for the hunters out there, bagging that buck may seem important, but it shouldn't be your top priority. After the break, Morgan Johnson will join us to tell what should be your top priority, and that's after weather with Jeff right here on Newswatch 12. We're 6 days into Wisconsin's 170th gun deer season, and while many hunters are excited about their trophy and freshly frozen venison, others are still anxiously awaiting that buck. But as Newswatch 12's Morgan Johnson tells us, now is not the time to take your sights off something else. Thanks, Morgan. At least one Northwoods community will be thinking Christmas tomorrow. Boulder Junction will host its 33rd annual Christmas walk. The event will be downtown 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. There will be horse-drawn wagon rides around downtown. At 4 p.m., there will be a Friends of the Library cookie walk. Santa and Mrs. Claus will make an appearance. They're going to arrive at 4:15. Christmas tree lighting and caroling start at 5, and shops will be open until 8. Cabaret Cove and Rhinelander will be hosting a Christmas craft show of their own on Saturday. About 20 local vendors will be there with crafts such as wood carvings, weavings, and paintings. There will be a baker there as well. Cabaret Cove will serve food and drink. The craft fair is this Saturday, 9 to 4. But before we get into Christmas, let's focus on Thanksgiving for a minute and maybe separate some fact from fiction. After these messages, we'll break down the history of this American holiday, including the first Thanksgiving that never was. We'll be right back. Thanksgiving travelers across the U.S. are flying in pre-pandemic numbers. The Transportation Security Administration says it screened 2.3 million people at U.S. airports just Wednesday. That makes it the busiest day at security checkpoints since March of 2020, when the pandemic was really just ramping up. It's also more than twice the number of people screened the day before Thanksgiving of last year. The TSA expects to screen more than 20 million people at airport security checkpoints this week for the Thanksgiving holiday. It was a Thanksgiving reunion 2 years in the making. After 24 months of staying away because of COVID-19 precautions, 11-year-old Piper and 8-year-old Alexa of Illinois were finally able to see and hug their grandparents. Their grandpa had a surprise with him, a fluffy white puppy named Rosie. The family's Thanksgiving plans are low-key this year, just spending time together in person, hanging out at home, and baking. It's something this family and many others have not been able to do for some time. For generations, Americans have celebrated Thanksgiving, often with a large meal and showing gratitude. But when did the holiday actually begin? Well, here's a hint. It wasn't the Pilgrims. When we were taught about Thanksgiving in school, we all learned about the harvest feast shared by the Pilgrims and an unnamed American Indian tribe. While a meal was shared, it wasn't the gesture of peace it has been made out to be. In 1621, Mayflower Pilgrims and Wampanoag people did sit down for a 3-day meal. At the time, it was just a routine English harvest celebration, and the Wampanoag joined the Pilgrims because the two groups had an alliance. But that alliance was short-lived. Years later, the Pilgrims started a decades-long war with their indigenous neighbors, ultimately ending in the massacre of the local tribes, including the Wampanoag. So the first Thanksgiving wasn't really a Thanksgiving or a peace gesture after all. It wasn't until 1789 that George Washington proclaimed the first National Day of Thanksgiving. But how did it become the annual recurring national holiday that we know now? Well, a key player in this transition was Sarah Josepha Hale, a magazine editor at the time. You may know her as the author of Mary Had a Little Lamb. In the mid-1800s, she campaigned for 17 years to create a national holiday called Thanksgiving. Fresh off a Civil War victory in 1865, President Abraham Lincoln took her advice. Lincoln thought it would be a good way to build an American identity.
after the country nearly divided in half. So he declared the last Thursday in November as the National Day of Thanksgiving. By the late 1880s, the concept of a pilgrim-centered Thanksgiving had blossomed in popular books. And that myth made its way into the public education system as a digestible way to learn about the Pilgrims and Thanksgiving. And that myth lives on in popular culture today.
My research came from the Smithsonian Magazine and National Geographic. We'll be right back with one final look at your weather after the break. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade returned this year without a hitch, except for one thing. Disaster was narrowly averted by some quick-thinking balloon handlers as the Wimpy Kid balloon became entangled in tree branches at the start of the parade route. You can see a few branches caught some of the ropes as the large balloon passed by. Crews acted fast, directing the balloon handlers, who were able to lower the balloon and free it before hitting the actual route. Not an easy task though, Jeff. This balloon is 56 feet high, weighs 280 pounds, and requires 90 handlers.
I get it, but there's no wind there today, so the handlers, I think, may have...
So you blame that one on the handlers?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, well, I want to resurrect a quick debate because, you know, what's Thanksgiving without a little argument?
Okay.
So I have two pies for you. This is the apple pie, of course, very famous, and the pumpkin pie. You got to choose one on your Thanksgiving.
Apple.
Apple.
Yes.
But pumpkin, it's just got that classic. Okay, well, whether you're enjoying pumpkin or apple today, the weather, everyone's affected by the weather, Jeff.
Yeah, we're hanging out in the teens out there now. We'll have lows tonight down in the single digits, and then some snow back in the forecast on Saturday. We'll be shoveling that one with like 1 to 3 inch snowfall on the way for us Saturday afternoon.
Thank you for joining us on NBC Newswatch 12 at 5. NBC Nightly News will start right now.